That was the hardest time of my life. There's no doubt about it. I was being rushed to ICU, and I felt myself going in and out of consciousness. And the doctor, you know that look on a doctor's face when they kind of know what's about to happen. Well, at least they're pretty sure. And the scans showed that my chest cavity was full of blood. It's surreal. I must say, I don't remember much of what happened. I think I lost consciousness a few times. My wife was with me, my savior. She was my rock. She was my spokesperson at the time while I could barely talk. Every time I tried to lift my head, I'd pass out. I didn't know what was going on. All I knew is that something was very, very wrong. In ICU, they linked me up to the machines and various things to monitor all my readings, and my blood pressure was very low. It was basically like on the verge of heart failure. And the doctor walked into the ICU and had just reviewed the CT scan, which was basically showed that there was just blood everywhere inside my chest cavity, a massive internal hemorrhage going on. And she said to me, "Look, it doesn't look good." And in my head, I'm like, yeah, well, I was a professional sportsman. I'm able to hear you. I can get through whatever's about to come. But I don't accept failure. That's not me. And my wife wasn't allowed into the ICU. It was COVID during that time, which I'm still really upset about. But anyways, it is what it is. And I messaged her to say that they're taking me in for emergency surgery and everything's going to be fine. And she called me and she's like, what is going on? Why, what's going on? But she was incredible. I mean, she really kept it together, and she tried to actually even reason with me and that sort of thing. And I said to her, no, just don't worry about it. I'm going to have the surgery and everything will be fine. And I said to her, I'll meet you at the lift between the ICU and the operating rooms. Got to the lift, couldn't open my eyes. I was basically unconscious at the time. And my wife uttered a bunch of incredibly meaningful words, which I don't recall. She told me what they were. And apparently I just squeezed her hand at the end of it to kind of show that I'd listened. I'd heard her. They'd rushed me out of the elevator to the operating room. Surgeon was waiting there. Everyone was frantic, trying to get the OR, ready in time, set up for a major post-thoracotomy. I didn't know what was going on really, except that I was about to go into major surgery. But I knew something was very, very wrong. And I felt regret. That, honestly, it was a little bit selfish, but I felt like I hadn't lived through all the experiences that I wanted to before I died. I remember looking at the nurse and saying, I really need to pee, but nothing's coming out. I knew that I was going into multi-organ failure at the time. My system was shutting down. It was a matter of minutes probably before my heart probably was going to give in too. And the look on her face was like, don't worry, just let's get through this. Let's just get through this. On went the mask that the anesthesiologist uses. And I remember saying to the surgeon, goodbye. Maybe for the last time. And the last thought I had was, maybe if this is what it feels like to die, or just before death, should I say, it's not so bad. It's not as bad as I thought. And then I knew all control was out of my hands. Next thing I knew, I woke up and I saw a clock on the wall, and that clock showed it was just after midnight. So 6 hours after the surgery had just started, and I thought I'd been through the worst, but it was about to get worse. Can you believe it actually could get worse than that? Woke up. Yeah, I woke up and there were handcuffs on me. My hands were handcuffed to the sides of the bed. I had a ventilator that was obviously down my throat, ventilated tube that was down my throat, and I was in severe pain. And that wasn't the worst part. It was that I couldn't breathe. And I know that sounds strange because I was on a ventilator, but the thing is, when you're on a ventilator, they're supposed to suction out the lungs quite regularly because it fills up with mucus. You know, like when you swallow the wrong way and you're trying to gasp for air, that's what it felt like, but worse because my lungs were full of mucus at the time. And the nurse had not been suctioning my lungs, clearly. I didn't know this, and I was trying desperately to get a little bit of oxygen in. And I knew I was in real trouble. And I started shaking my hands and, like really trying to get this nurse's attention who was next to me. And the nurse looked at me and said, behave yourself. Told me to go back to sleep. I was mortified, but I could barely breathe, and I kept trying, and then the nurse went back to sleep next to my bed while I was basically drowning post-surgery. in extreme pain, of course, because I just had major surgery, one of the most painful surgeries that you can have. And I remember thinking to myself, you're in a battle for survival now. You can handle extreme situations. When you were on the tennis court, you were playing for your country, when it was all or nothing moments, you always got through it. And I said to myself, what do I need to do? I need to lower my heart rate. I need to calm down, and I need to actually fall asleep while drowning. I started doing relaxation exercises, started imagining myself on the tennis court in my happy space. And I fell asleep. I had to battle through the next couple of hours. Every now and then I'd wake up, I had to try and force myself to fall asleep again, and I'd still shake the bed, and the nurse would do the same thing. Behave yourself, go to sleep. Only the next morning, when the doctor came, did they finally suction my lungs and take out the ventilator, and I could breathe for the first time. I was told that the night before I had survived a surgery, that I had a 10% chance of surviving, roughly. People are supposed to die when they lose 2 or 2.5 liters of blood. I had lost 4.5 liters of blood, plus whatever was in the drain, which could easily have been another 500 liters. Now, they're 500 mils, I mean. Now, there are only 5 liters of blood in the human body, depending on your size, of course. I got through that. I don't know how. The surgeon didn't really know how either. He said it was just... I was basically dead on the table when he arrived. He said it was... I'm a miracle case that managed to get through it. Maybe it was the fact that I was fit and healthy and high altitude living. I don't know. It could have been a lot of things. Plus, who knows, maybe up there someone was looking after me. But one way or the other, I survived, and yeah, that was a tough time. Spent 9 days in the ICU during peak of COVID. My wife got me through it. I had a lot of PTSD after that. I don't know how I got through that, because I was in such agony after that surgery for so long. Still am today. And I'm talking about physical agony, nerve pain, massive amounts of nerve pain. But here I am, and you know, I've actually never been happier. Isn't that the funny thing? A lot of people say when you're... I wouldn't want to live in pain, in a lot of pain. That for me would be an absolute no-no. Well, pain is very subjective. Pain can be overcome to a certain extent. It can be managed. And I'm not even referring to medications. Medication can help, can also give you an addiction, especially when it comes to pain. But yeah, I'm in constant severe pain all the time, and I manage. Not only do I manage, but I run a full-time practice. And I help people through their difficulties, through their PTSD, their anxiety, their relationship issues. And it brings me a lot of joy. Thank you for listening. I'm Byron Werbeloff from Counselling.